What's up, guys? Today's Geeky Acrylics video is just going to be a quick piece covering the sanding process for after you bake your pop. So now it's important that you remember to let your piece cool down. I like to wait 24 hours before I touch my pop after baking. I'll pop up the video, the card in the corner, and I'll put in the description below if you haven't seen my video on baking tips. Your piece will not be completely cured and hardened until after it's cooled, so it's important to just leave it alone. So I hit the sanding portion usually the next day, and I'm going to give you some tips for what I do to get a really smooth pop prep for paint work. So safety first, I always make sure to wear a mask, even though you're generally polishing with a fine sandpaper and you can't really tell that there's a lot of dust and clay particles, but it will definitely get all in your nose and your lungs. You don't want to do that. So safety first. There's also wet and dry sanding. Technically, you can just go in and sand with sandpaper and smooth your sculpt. For me personally, I prefer wet sanding, and for that, I like to use an automotive primer and an automotive sandpaper that specifically say that you can wet sand. So just always look for that on the package if that's something that you want to try. It just helps you get a really smooth polished surface. But if you don't have that, then that's fine too. If I have rough spots when I'm sanding, the base that I'm working with here in the video, the edges of the base were kind of rough still after baking. So I used a regular sandpaper, about 400 to 500 grit. I didn't wet sand it. I just went around the edges smoothing it. And then when I came back to polish my sculpt with an 800 grit, dipped it in the water. Like you can see behind me, I have it's a sour cream bowl. You don't have to have anything fancy. But, so I'm using a plastic sour cream tub, and I've got a little bit of warm water in it. It doesn't necessarily, I think, have to be warm, but I prefer that. So, I dip the sandpaper into the water, and then I sand over the surface. So that little bit extra going with the wet sanding, it leaves an unbelievably smooth surface. So that's really great when you're trying to prep before paint, because it's important to remember, even if you're a great painter, the quality of your paint job is usually going to depend on the quality of the prep, not your actual paint skills. You can have an amazing paint job, but if your prep work, the surface you're painting on doesn't look good, it's not smooth enough, it's going to affect how your paint job looks, how your overall sculpt looks. So I take my time with this piece. I usually do it in steps. The day after, when I come back, I do a little sanding, then I prime it, then I sand it, prime it. I'll repeat the steps as much as I need to until I get as many of the little nicks and stuff out of the sculpt. Because sometimes you think that you got it super smooth and you've done a great job getting everything smooth and ready prior to baking, but then you bake it and you see these little marks, these little nicks. I try to keep my nails short, but sometimes I'll leave a nail mark in it, and then that's such a pain. So I'll repeat the steps as many times as needed as far as priming and sanding in order to get a really smooth finished product. So it's something that you're just going to have to experiment with. Your first sculpt may not be perfect. Some people use a Dremel little sanding tool you can switch out the little Dremel tips to, different grits and kind of go in and get sanding down in hard to reach places that are hard. The arms were really hard to sand on this figure because I'm trying to get the sandpaper in between the little, the grooves and the tight spaces. So it's kind of a pain, and I think I might actually invest in a Dremel and try that. And that might be in an upcoming video, probably pretty soon. And I will let you know how that goes. But yeah, don't be scared to prime and resand over, a couple times. Just whatever you need to do to get that smooth surface. And that pretty much covers everything. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. I'll try to answer whatever I can. I'm self-taught, and this has been kind of trial and error for me, but I've done a couple sculpts now, and it's getting a little easier, and each one gets a little better. So I'm happy to help. And if there's anything you want to see in future videos, let me know as well, and I will try to get those videos out to you. And so I hope you will give this video a like if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you want to see more Geeky Acrylics art videos. Thank you for watching.